focused space agriculture work at the moment. What we do have are growth chambers that has controlled environment. We can control the environment. We also have what we call the large hypobaric chambers, which are these massive chambers that you can put your plants in. You can seal it up, lock it, and then you can lower the pressure down to the pressure of Mars or Moon. And the main focus of ours is looking at how plants respond to environment conditions. So it's more of a biological study, not a ecosystem study. So our focus is mostly on
individual plants.
Yeah, so how do plants react at low pressure? How do plants react under... Now, because you're growing them indoors, you have to provide artificial lighting, right? So you have to provide electric lighting, so use LED lights. So that opens up a whole avenue to control plant growth using lights, using the color of the light, the duration of the light exposure, the intensity, the brightness of the light. So you can play with that. You can play with carbon dioxide. So you can improve the carbon dioxide, increase the carbon dioxide concentration to improve how plants grow, improve the biomass production. So that's the focus, because ultimately when plants are growing in space, they will be growing in some sort of growth chamber, and having the right environment such that you can grow plants more efficiently, so there's more biomass produced per unit resource, is a topic of concern for us. So that's mostly what we do in terms of, we have growth chambers and control environment growth chambers. And the other thing is we can measure. So all the growth chambers we have, pretty much all of the growth chambers we have, are completely sealed. So you can measure the gas exchange, so carbon dioxide exchange in the plants. And essentially CO2 or carbon dioxide exchange tells us about photosynthesis, how well the plants are photosynthesizing. And higher photosynthesis means higher biomass production. So the goal for food is, if you're growing lettuce, you want as much as lettuce as biomass, right? So tweaking the environment conditions such that you find the optimal point where the plants are growing efficiently, using less resources, using less nutrients, less light, but at the same time producing or maximizing the biomass produced, right? How many kilos of lettuce can you grow? And a direct application of this technology is controlled environment agriculture on Earth. The shape it takes is crudely greenhouses, but more specifically vertical farms. Right? You grow all your plants indoors in hydroponic trays, and because it's hydroponic, you can stack them up and you can control the environment, control the light, CO2 temperature, humidity, etc. And that way you can grow more efficiently compared to in the field. So that's a direct terrestrial application. And you asked me, why should anyone care about space agriculture? And this is one of the direct
increasing
spin-offs.
the efficiency or output, agricultural output.
Yes. The whole field of vertical farming is a spin-off from NASA's exploration into growing plants in controlled environments. So there's a lot of work to be done, 100%, in terms of making vertical farms mainstream.
So your lab is in the hypobaric conditions, so operates on low pressure.
You could do that if you want, So
so you guys play with the factors that influence plant growth. So you guys can influence light condition, luminosity, concentration of carbon dioxide, pressure also you can decrease or increase, humidity, temperature. So what is the answer you guys are searching for right now?
The most broad question is, how do plants react to certain environmental conditions in a controlled environment setup, and how could that be harnessed for commercial purposes? Okay. Within that, you have different research projects looking at different environment conditions and different desirable outcomes. So one research project, student Matthew Wake, he worked on growing wheat in a controlled environment hydroponic growth setup, right? So the project looked at changing the light intensities, growing plants under different light intensities, and how that affects growth and also the grain yield of wheat. So that's one project. So, and he was interested in, can you bring the light intensity lower and still get the same yield, such that you can reduce the energy consumption? Right. My research project, and there are a couple of students under this general project, we look at different plant species, and there's another student looking at mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, but they're not the psychoactive kind. Traditionally used, mushroom called reishi. And we're looking at, again, different environment conditions and how that affects the biochemistry of the plant. So for medicinal plants, that's the main focus, right? So what the biochemical compounds of interest are and how we can increase them. We can manipulate the light, stress the plants with high light, and as a response, plants will produce compounds that are sort of a natural sunscreen. Okay, and these compounds have antioxidant and medicinal properties. That's one way. You can have UV stress, which acts similarly. You can have temperature stress. So yeah, you can play with all kinds of environment conditions. And this is for medicinal plants. What other projects do we have? We have projects that looked at biostimulants. So when you grow plants in hydroponics, you can add sort of a microbial consortium that produce some organic compounds that the plants respond to, and that potentially could increase the growth, or it could also increase its tolerance to diseases, right? So that's another sort of an environment condition, you could say, but that's another project. So the specific projects are wide-ranging, right? From light to medicinal plants to yield to productivity to
pressure, temperature,
yes,
humidity.
But yeah, the overall question is
there any database on how plants react to all these factors? Like with high intensity light, plant do this, like there is a high chlorophyll density in the leaf, or more growth pattern, or is there any database where they have stored all the plant changes to all these changing factors? That could be useful. So if anybody wants to build an efficient system of plant growth, they can look at the database and see, okay, tomato plant behaves like this with this factors. I think that would be a cool database to have, right?
Yes. So there's I'm not aware of a specific database for controlled environments, but there is a newly created database for plant stress. So it's a database of how plants react to stresses, environmental stresses. I cannot recall the author's name of this paper, but there is a database on that. So it's a collection of all the research that's been done on how plants react to different stresses. What are the effects? If there's any transcriptome analysis done?
Right.
So what's the transcript? So the papers are linked, so you can sort through the whole database and figure out.
Amazing.
But there's no specific. I'm not aware of any specific database for plant environment interactions, but there are some meta-analyses. So taking all the studies of that have been done on plants,
right,
combining them, and then summarizing the
whole catalog.
So you can draw response curves. So if this is how do plants behave in terms of their biomass with the increasing light intensity. So typically, as you increase the light intensity, there's more biomass produced. Okay, so there are a couple of meta-analysis that have been done on summarizing the plant responses to light, CO2, maybe temperature. I'm not sure, but light and CO2 I know.
Nice.
Yeah, but yeah, databases would be helpful.
And how do you guys simulate microgravity condition?
We don't do it in our lab, but typically, wherever they do make, do these studies, there's something called a clinostat.
What? A clinostat?
Clinostat. So what it does is it's sort of a workaround for the for simulating gravity. It's not a pure microgravity system. Essentially, what gravity is a vector, right? So it's a force vector in a particular direction. For all practical purposes for the plant, that's gravity. Now what a clinostat does is it's moving in all different axes. Like it keeps moving. It keeps changing the vector. So there's no one standard stable vector.
Right.
So all the vectors are canceled out, and it's the net vector applied on the plants or seeds is sort of zero. So it keeps changing, and all it's a cool system. It keeps rotating in different axes, and that way you're essentially tricking the plant, saying that there is no vector. That means there is no gravity. But the actual microgravity is in the space, in the ISS. So there are a lot of experiments that have been, setups that have been sent to the space station, and then they're exposed to true microgravity. Or, excuse me, some of the recent studies were done in the Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, the space flights that go to space. You get a brief window of microgravity where the plants, are exposed to the microgravity, and then you immediately, let's say, they developed a system, a contraption where you can, once they're exposed to microgravity at a specific time, you can deploy that system, and then it immediately captures the plant matter, and it's sort of, let's think of it as a way of taking a snapshot of the biochemistry at that moment, and it sort of captures it, and you can come back, and then you can analyze it, what happened. So it sort of freezes it, let's say,
right?
Speak in very crude sense, and then you can analyze the RNA, the proteins, and the gene actions of the
metabolites.
Plants. Yeah, once you come back, so you can look into what exactly is happening in the plant at that place and time in microgravity.
The transition from gravity to microgravity.
Yeah. So that's how it's done mostly. Yeah.
So it relies on the clinostat relies on the centrifugal force, is it?
The disruption of a constant centrifugal force, and it's sort of a simulation. It's not a true microgravity.
Right.
But I have no hands-on experience on microgravity, but I did a research project just looking at the literature of not microgravity but hypergravity.
More gravity.
So
conditions of Jupiter.
Yes, I mean, there's no immediate practical purpose of hypergravity, right? When we go to the moon or Mars, it'll be a microgravity situation. But it's easier to simulate hypergravity even in those places, right? You basically have to spin seeds or plants. And it's from a biological standpoint, it's a curious question. Low gravity, yes. What about high gravity, right? So I did a brief research project on that, and we basically looked at how plants respond to hypergravity.
How did they respond to it?
So the main response of plants is that they grow shorter and more stout.
And thickness of the stem is broad. I mean, thicker than the
control. Yeah. So because they have to withstand more force that's acting on them under hypergravity, they have to strengthen their structure. Nice. So you find that there's more hemicellulose, cellulose, and lignin, which are these
structural
polymers
component.
that gives the structure, right? And then instead of growing longer, they grow, outwards a bit, so thicker. That also provides more stability to the plant.
That's how we can do a bonsai rather than patiently cutting the trees. Subject the plant to hypergravity
but they have to be spinning constantly.
Because
once you take them off of hypergravity,
what happens later?
So they will grow. They will snap out of that.
Oh, okay. They respond immediately to the eventually to the normal gravity.
Yeah, so it's not persistent, but they do have the memory though. There's some sort of. I mean, there's so much we don't know. So
so much we don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some sort of epigenetic mechanisms happening that has that the plants remember.
Right.
But they acclimate to the normal conditions, because anything that's not optimal is expenditure. So if plants have to grow under hypergravity, that means it's out of the normal. That means plants have to spend more energy and resources to counteract this, which is not ideal, right? So plants always, try to balance to get to the most optimal resource use.
Right.